Part 18. Pirate's Bounty Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 178. Luogu passed by this carriage. When I came back at this time, I realized that this place turned out to be a kitchen. There was a chef in the kitchen who was bouncing around, and he didn't know what he was doing. Luogu ignored him, and he ignored Luogu. The two of them seemed to be at peace with each other. Then Luogu suddenly remembered something about a weird chef. He kneaded the dough with his mouth, ramen came out of his nostrils, and finally poured the soup. When he thought of this, he felt a little sick. After thinking about it, he decided to go to the front car. Just as Luogu was walking forward, the carriage suddenly shook. He and the chef stopped at the same time. It seems like something happened. The man spoke. Luogu nodded. The intruder on the ship is still not resolved. Who are you? The chef looked at Luogu. Luogu smiled, a good man. He was slightly stunned. What does it mean to be a good person? Seeing Luogu was about to leave, he suddenly dodged and stood in front of Luogu. Luogu tilted his head and looked at him. He didn't want to take action. Why did he block his way? Your identity is a bit suspicious, I need to investigate. Clearly the cook on the opposite side had a serious face. Luogu sighed, held his fist in front of him and said, "Do you know what this is?" Fist. Well, it hurts to be hit on the face, Luogu said. Ha 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 ha. When the cook heard this, he suddenly went crazy. He laughed loudly and put his head in front of Luogu. Come on, hit me and see how much your fist hurts. Luogu hesitated. You might die if I punch you. Ha 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 ha. The cook was almost laughing crazy. Come on, let me feel what kind of fist can kill me. Come on, try it with your weak little hands. If you can't kill me, you will be beaten to death. It can only be you, and judging from the fact that you don't know me at all, there is indeed a problem with your identity. If you don't want me to report to the superiors, wouldn't the best way be to get rid of me now? But you, the look on your face tells me that you don't have any at all. Before he could finish speaking, after a crisp sound, there was a hole in the glass. What is certain is that the punch of the 6th level Julie is indeed not something these people can compete with. With this punch, Luogu clearly felt that the opponent's entire head was shattered. It's not certain whether he will die or not, but at least he will fall into a coma, and outside is the vast sea. Well, it's really not cost-effective as a hunter. Luogu didn't like this kind of battle without income. If this can really be regarded as a battle. Just a weird request from an idiot, give it a little gratification. After Luogu thought for a while, his figure gradually changed. He became the same cook as before, and he couldn't fit his clothes. He searched slowly in the kitchen, and found a set of clothes in a cupboard. Luogu took it out and looked at it for a long time. There are actually people who put clothes in the cupboard. He shook his head, feeling incredible. After putting on his clothes, he looked at the kitchen. I'm a little hungry. The happiest time for people is when they are hungry. They have something to eat immediately, and when they are sleepy, they are able to sleep immediately. Although it is not immediately available to eat, there are all kinds of ingredients in the kitchen. Eggs, meat, whatever. Luogu rubbed his belly, looked at the pot, and hesitated for a moment, wondering if he should use his strength. Just as he was struggling, the door of the carriage was opened. Frankie, Sanji, and the weirdo with the mask, well, everyone can tell the true identity of the long nose that emerges from the gap between the faces. After looking at each other with these three people, Luogu asked, "Is there a chef?" The three of them were stunned at the same time. Then Usopp pointed at Sanji and Frankie pointed at Luogu. "Isn't that you?" Sanji nodded, Rogu shook his head, and the others were surrounded together. What the hell is this weird situation? Finally Luogu sighed, "I'm hungry, are you willing to make me something to eat? If you like, after eating, you can go wherever you want. Are you kidding? Sanji was furious. Miss Robin is still waiting for us to rescue her. Who has time to cook for a guy like you? Luogu sighed. Hey, you are all powerful people. Of course you can ignore people like me who are about to starve to death. Forget it, just leave me alone. Anyway, if I starve to death, the ghost will follow you forever. Usopp was stunned, coughed, and said, if there is a chef, it's best to cook for him. The ghost or something must be a lie, Frankie said uncertainly. Sanji's face darkened, and he took a deep breath. You go first. After finishing speaking, he rolled up his arms and sleeves and walked to the stove. If there was a fighting navy, it would obviously have started now, but the problem is that the guy in front of him is just a hungry bastard. Although it's not certain what he will do after eating. But now I still can't let it go. Patiently chop green onions, cut meat, process seafood, heat oil in a pan, beat eggs, and fry rice. At the end of the tossing, a large plate of delicious food was placed in front of Luogu. Luogu sniffed it. It's really good. He took it over and said, okay, let's go quickly. After I finish eating, I will go with you to see the excitement. Hey, Yamanaka was stunned. Who are you? Friends, Luogu said with a smile. We are friends, good friends, one for each of us. Sanji's pupils shrank suddenly, and the guy before suddenly disappeared. However, looking at the cook now, could he really be alone? Nothing like it at all. But this is only true for that person. What exactly is going on? Sanji was a little confused, and when he turned to leave, he looked back while walking. Rogu ate, turned his head and smiled at Sanji. Sanji shuddered. An inexplicable feeling of horror surged through my body, and I always felt as if I had experienced some terrible horror. Young people nowadays, I really don't know what's going on, how they are so easily frightened. Luogu shook his head and began to eat with big mouthfuls. He did eat dinner, but isn't it midnight now? I drank some red wine in the evening, and now my stomach is really empty. Pirate's Bounty, don't run away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 179. Putting the rice in his mouth, Luogu found a bottle of red wine from the kitchen to help with the meal. After a few minutes of work, he was full and patted his stomach with satisfaction. Now, what's going on again? I don't know. He thought for a moment, then suddenly changed back to the Cu9 person before, put on his original clothes, opened the door of the carriage, and looked up. Despite the sound of wind and rain, people fighting on the roof can still be heard. Still fighting. He jumped up and saw two people fighting passionately on another carriage not far away. Luogu put one hand in his pocket and looked up at the sky as he walked forward. When will this rain start? While muttering, he came in front of the two of them. Frankie saw this friend at a glance and felt a chill in his heart. He stopped his original movement, looked at Luogu vigilantly, and at the same time stared at his original opponent. Well, another guy whom Luogu didn't know looked at him and said, "Are you here to help? We don't need a little guy like you here." Luogu smiled and said to Frankie, "Friend, go down and leave this guy to me." "What did you say, X2?" Frankie spoke together with the unknown man. Luogu picked his ears. "I said, leave this guy to me. Is there any problem? Is it possible?" Frankie was a little unsure. This friend appeared very strangely and disappeared strangely. Now he suddenly had to replace him, and he didn't know what his plans were. In the end, no matter what his plans are, it is always good to have one less enemy. As for if this guy really has a conspiracy, to put it bluntly, is there any big difference between exposing it now and later? Immediately nodded and said, "Okay, then be careful." After finishing speaking, he jumped out of the car and entered another car from the interface. "Stop." My original opponent was not happy and left immediately. Did he take me seriously? He was about to chase after him, but he only felt the collar on his neck tighten. He turned around and saw that Luogu was dragging him along at some point. "Don't go, even if you go down like this, it's just a dead end. It's better to stay up and watch the excitement." Luogu smiled and said, "By the way, what is your name? You're not one of ours, are you?" The man waved his hand and slapped Luogu's hand away. "But, I seem to have seen your face." Luogu rubbed his face, and in the next second, he suddenly looked like the person opposite him and smiled. "Is this face familiar?" "Who looks so familiar?" The man looked at his face in surprise. "Why does it feel so familiar? I must know him. It's hopeless. No wonder I only learned 4 postures even though I have 6 postures," Luogu said with a smile, "but it doesn't matter. I don't mind the 4 postures. So, let's discuss something, okay?" "What's the matter?" He subconsciously followed Luogu's words, and then became furious. "Why should I discuss it with you?" "It's nothing, it's okay if you don't discuss it." Luogu spread his hands. "It's up to you, I won't let you go anyway." "What the hell do you want to do?" "Well, how about telling me the 6th form and how the 4th form is used?" Luogu said with a smile. "I am actually quite interested in this, but I have never been embarrassed to ask. Although I can still find someone if I want to ask." Asked. "Why should I tell you?" "Well, it doesn't matter if you don't tell me. Anyway, if you don't tell me, if I can't beat you, I will kill you." Luogu sighed softly. "I am actually a very talkative person. Of course, I am also like this now. If you tell me what I want to know, I won't kill you. How fair. I see you." As soon as he said this, the man in front of him suddenly disappeared. The next second, he appeared from behind Luogu. "He's crazy." Along with the words, there was also a fist. Hi's fist was actually very tricky, and basically it was a vital attack. This fist was aimed at Luogu's neck. However, in the next second, the fist suddenly fell into the air, and Luogu's figure was no longer in place. But a voice came from behind. "I didn't understand, let's do it again." "What?" The man turned around suddenly and saw Luogu smiling at him. "Let's use it again. If I guess correctly, it should be shaved." "You guy." There was a hint of shock on that person's face. He never expected Luogu's speed to be so fast. Immediately under his feet, the figure disappeared in an instant. When he reappeared, he was already in mid-air. "Lan Xiao." Luogu took a look, then retreated abruptly, and the kick was lost in an instant. He touched his chin and thought for a moment. "Let me think about it. I seem to remember that the so-called shaving is actually the moment when your feet hit the ground, and the reaction force generated by this propels you to move at high speed. But I don't quite understand what kind of force method is required to move instead of jumping in place. Now I see how you use it, and I understand it somewhat. And then the Arashiji vacuum slash. In comparison, Shanji's kicking skills are much more gorgeous. That kind of thing is very troublesome and hard to learn, but this land kick seems to be a little easier. Let me try it too." As soon as the voice fell, his figure disappeared from the eyes of the opponent in the next second, and in a flash, there were already more people beside him. There was also an extra hand on the shoulder. The owner of that hand said with excitement, "It's pretty fast. I have a foundation in silent walking. I'm pretty good at learning and mastering it." "You." The man simply felt that he had seen a ghost. "What the hell is this? Is it someone from the Navy who came to tease me, or is it an accomplice of the pirates? 2 possibilities, different endings." My mind suddenly flashed. I stepped into the air suddenly, and in a blink of an eye, I was already in midair, and stepped on the void again. The figure was even higher. Luogu looked up. "You." Then he sighed. "This kind of thing, if you don't know the principle, you can't learn it at all." Seeing that this person was about to fall in mid-air, Luogu also saw the movement of his footsteps. He smiled immediately. Let me try it too. He doesn't know how to do it. Although he took a look at it twice, he still doesn't know the principle. But he can do swordsmanship. It suddenly flew up, and with a buzzing sound, the crescent-shaped air blade that tore the void burst out immediately. What? The man's pupils suddenly shrank in mid-air. He originally planned to use the force of his fall to use Lankow to increase its power, but at this time there was no way to wait. A Lan kick was kicked out immediately, and suddenly collided with Luogu's blow. There was a loud bang, and the man in the air suddenly screamed, and he flew higher and higher. Luogu glanced twice, jumped up, grabbed it in his hand, landed on the roof of the car, looked up and said, "Well, the rain has stopped." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate's Bounty, Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 180. The person in his hand has lost consciousness. Luogu thought for a while and felt a little bored. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, he grabbed the man's neck and started slapping him. After 3 strokes, the man woke up. I saw a big slap in the face in a daze and slapped it over, and said quickly, "Stop, stop, stop. Oh, wake up." Luogu smiled. How do you feel? Are you feeling well? How could it be good? The man was dumbfounded. His right leg was almost useless, his face was so painful that it was almost on fire, all the strength in his body seemed to be crushed, and he couldn't even lift it up. Taking a deep breath, wow, a mouthful of blood spurted out. Luogu frowned, stretched out his hand and turned his face to the other side, letting the blood spit out elsewhere. Now, how about a truce between the two of us? After all, there is no reason to continue fighting in the first place. Luogu smiled. Tell me, how do you do the moon steps and land xiao? Oh, by the way, there is also paper painting, it should be called this. The man opened his mouth and suddenly became depressed. Being toyed with by applause, he has absolutely no ability to fight back. Even if this guy doesn't learn these moves, it's just like playing with him. What will happen if he learns them? Well, before that, let's introduce ourselves, Luogu said with a smile. How about I come first? My name is Feng Clay. What's your name? Feng Clay. The man felt a little familiar when he heard the name, but he didn't have time to think about it carefully, so he memorized the name carefully, and then said, "Si Ataka Naruku." Naruo. Luogu looked at him sideways. Why are you looking at me like that? It's nothing. Luogu shook his head. It's just that I suddenly understood why you can't live long. Why don't I live long? Naruku was even more confused. Why did he curse himself when he was so good? Are you going to beat me to death? Luogu waved his hand. Don't worry about the details, let's continue our previous topic. This is not a detail at all, okay. People under the eaves had to lower their heads, and Naruku accepted his fate. In this way, he explained in detail the 4 moves he could master. Luogu is not afraid that he will hide something. After all, for a character of his level, basically as long as the difference in learning combat skills is not too big or too bizarre, you only need to listen to the general principle, and you can basically learn it. Figure it out. Therefore, if it is a lie, most of it can be heard. After hearing these 4 moves, Luogu asked him to explain the rest. Navy 6 styles: shaving, moon step, haze foot, paper painting, iron block, finger gun. Although Naruku the ferret didn't learn all of them, the principle is still clear. After Luogu listened to it, he thought about it for a while, and felt that except for the iron block, he should be able to get started quickly. At the moment, I didn't care about the ferret. Naruku just told him, if I were you, I wouldn't go here or there. After finishing speaking, he began to try by himself. I failed at the beginning, and after failing 3 or 5 times, I gradually succeeded, and the success rate gradually increased. Only the iron block, this move is very strange. It seems that it is difficult to completely master this move with ordinary learning methods. When he was able to run around the sky with moon steps, he looked back and saw that the sea weasel Naraku had disappeared. It's really disobedient. He returned to the carriage and sat down. After a moment of silence, footsteps came from behind him. Looking back, a woman with blonde hair and glasses was walking over, with a swaying figure, which was unusual. Luogu blinked and waved to her, "Hi." The woman smiled slightly, and disappeared in the next second. Luogu sighed, "Is it really appropriate to just take action without even saying hello? It was a bit awkward to walk with high heels on my feet. After trying it a few more times, I slowly got the feel for it. When walking, it becomes graceful and swaying." Luogu looked at the blonde-haired sister Yu who had been tied up, and took off her glasses. He took it in his hand and looked at it carefully, and was a little surprised. It actually has no degree. Wearing it on the face, he gently supported it, and nodded in satisfaction. "Not bad, thanks." He looked back and saw that Khalifa was wearing the same agent outfit that Luogu had worn before. It is clothes and at the same time bondage. His hands were cut back, and something was stuffed in his mouth. He was making a whining sound, struggling hard, but there was nothing he could do. Luogu smiled, thought for a while, and happened to see the distant carriage behind him. "Okay, it depends on your luck." He didn't have any sympathy for her, so he dragged the person over and threw him violently. Khalifa immediately burst into tears, and her mouth whimpered even more fiercely, but she couldn't stop herself from moving at all, and finally bumped into the roof of the carriage with a bang, and fell completely. In the carriage, Usopp and Sanji were in a depressed mood. The sound was not loud and Sanji didn't hear it. Usopp asked strangely, "Is there any sound?" "Stop thinking so wildly," Sanji said in a depressed tone, "no matter what, you can't just give up." Khalifa struggled on the roof of the carriage, her legs were still able to move freely. She also knew who was in the carriage. If it fell into their hands, the fate would definitely be even more bleak. Suddenly turned over and fell into the water with a thud. As soon as she fell down on her side, Usopp had already climbed onto the roof of the carriage. He was curious if there was something. The result is empty. Is it really my imagination? Scratching his head, he returned to the carriage, and lost with Sanji. Luogu set up a pergola with his hands. After watching for a long time, he was not sure whether it was a hit or not, so he ignored it in the end. Stepping on the high heels, the voice is clear and clear, "It is the strange shape and hard work of the 2 feet, it is really fortunate that these women can support them." Jumped off the roof, turned around and entered the compartment. Several CP9 people were present. Before they could speak, Luogu had already nodded, "Solved." His voice is also completely Khalifa's voice. The man with a bird on his shoulder nodded, and Luogu found a random place to sit down. He quietly closed his eyes, and waited. The next step should be to Judicial Island. After we arrive, what should we do? Speaking of which, there seem to be 2 devil fruits on Judiciary Island. Pirate's Bounty, Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 183. Listening to anything is actually casual. For example, Luogu is now only listening to the drum noise, and shouts outside. Really, endless life. Rogu shook his head, and after pondering for a while, he suddenly opened the window, thought for a while, turned around and brought Frankie and Robin into the office. Then he groped on Frankie's body. "Hey, why are you letting me go, you bastard?" Frankie was really a little anxious. This sudden guy who looked like a pervert was also a man. What the hell was he doing blindly? How do I open it? Luogu searched carefully for a long time and found that he could not find any very suspicious mechanism buckle. Finally, he said to Frankie, "How about you open it for me?" "Why should I open it?" "Because it contains Pluto's design," Luogu said. Robin immediately looked at Frankie, and then said to Luogu, "Aren't you not interested in this?" Luogu shrugged his shoulders and said, "It's true that I'm not interested in Pluto, but I also have a ship that needs to be repaired. Or maybe I'm building one. You also know that my ship is still there robbing pirates. Aren't they the best craftsmen in the capital of Seven Waters? After what's going on here, you and him will probably have to run away. There's no way I can get you to help me build one ship. In the end I have no choice but to find someone else." "Well, the man with purple lips is a better choice, but he may not necessarily help me, but if I have the blueprint of Pluto, he will definitely help me. You say it right." Frankie looked at Robin and then at Luogu, feeling as if his brain was about to short-circuit. What the hell is this rhythm? It shouldn't be such a harmonious and friendly atmosphere, right? It should obviously be tense, right? What the hell is going on? He asked blankly, "Do you know each other?" Luogu looked at Robin, but Robin was silent. Finally Luogu said, "Guess." Frankie's face is dark. "Guess what?" "If you don't guess, don't guess," Luogu said. "Give me the design of Pluto." Frankie frowned. "How did you know?" He always knew something that no one else knew, and the source of the information was unknown. Robin added, "You also said you don't know each other." Frankie was dumbfounded. The two shook their heads together. "We didn't say anything." Frankie was so pissed off. Finally Robin said, "I can't say his identity, but he is not Spondum." Frankie glanced at Luogu. "Who are you?" Luogu was helpless. Friend, how can you forget others so easily? Have you forgotten? You have a great goal to achieve, and so do I. It's you." Frankie's eyes almost fell out of his head. He turned to Robin and said, "You know, he is the suspicious guy I mentioned." Robin nodded, "I know, so don't worry." Luogu listened carefully and finally said, "We don't have much chance. The Straw Hats are almost gathering, and our side, CP9, is about to gather. Putting things on your body is the same as putting it on me. Anyway, I don't plan to use this, or the way of using it is different. If you believe me, just give it to me. If you don't believe me, Luogu was caught in a tangle. "What if I don't believe you?" Frankie asked. "Then I'll kill you," Luogu said. "Everyone who prevents me from repairing the ship will be terminated." Frankie said to Robin, "This guy really can't be trusted." Robin was helpless. "Believe him. I think he is really not interested in Hades. Because he once had a chance." Frankie took a deep look at Robin. "I hope you are right." After finishing speaking, I don't know how Frankie did it. With a click, a cover opened on his body, and a stack of papers was taken out. Luogu took it, glanced at it casually, and stuffed it into his small bag. Then he gave Robin and Frankie a look at the contents of the bag. Devil fruits, golden phone bugs, Pluto designs. The two of them were dumbfounded. This guy is definitely the most sinister criminal. What is worth getting? I'm just showing it to you, so I won't share it with you, Luogu said with a smile. I'll ask the guards to put down the suspension bridge and let them in. After that, I won't care about it. As he spoke, he picked up the phone bug on the table. Tangled for a long time, hesitated for a long time, and then let it go. The two men and women, who were in a tangle, struggled for a long time, and finally looked at Luogu together, wondering why they suddenly let go. Luogu sighed and said, "Well, I don't know the number of the phone bug on the front line, so there is no way." The corner of Frankie's mouth twitched, wishing he could grab the ground with his head. Robin asked, "Where is the real Spondum?" "I stripped him naked, beat him up, blindfolded him, gagged his mouth, and wrapped him around like a 1,000-year-old mummy, and finally threw him into a box. I thought, when he recovers, when you regain consciousness, you will definitely be happy that you are still alive." As Luogu said, he led the two of them out of the window. Opposite, a boy wearing a straw hat shouted loudly, "Robin." Luogu picked his ears and said, he should be given a big speaker, or a phone bug with amplification, or something like that. Will his throat really not hurt if he shouts like this? After this roar, the agents of CP9 arrived a moment later. "What about Lucci? He has a long nose, a big head, white hair, and weird shapes, all in place." Roga glanced at them, then winked at Robin and Frankie. "I'm very relieved to see you." Then he loudly said to Luffy opposite, "Boy, your road has become narrow for you." Everyone immediately paid attention to Luogu. This statement was really new. Luogu thought for a while and then said, "In short, this is Judiciary Island. If you come here to run wild, are you planning to make the entire world an enemy?" After finishing speaking, he suddenly pulled Robin to him. "Is it worth it just for such a woman?" He whispered into Robin's ear and said, "Let's talk something sensational. It will inspire their little universe and give them more power to tear apart CP9 sniper attacks." He was thinking that if it didn't work, he would punch Robin twice in front of them. This might arouse a lot of anger in them, but it's not necessarily that. Well, Spondum was the one who hit him, not him. Pirate's Bounty, don't run away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 184. Robin was dumbfounded. What happened? Do you want to intensify the conflict? Although the arrival of Luffy and the others has completely intensified the conflict, but what should have been sensational, the emotion in my heart, etc., because of Luogu's inexplicable behavior, I can't express it at all. How to do? Hey. Luffy's voice came again, "Robin." Everyone looked up and heard Luffy yelling loudly, "What on earth is that idiot talking about? I don't understand at all." Roga grinned, finally sighed, and suddenly threw Robin aside. Just as he was about to speak, he saw the ground behind Luffy suddenly explode. A group of people appeared on the roof amidst the explosion. Just when a few people stood firm, another hole leaked out. A young man with curly eyebrows and blonde hair wearing a suit and holding a cigarette rushed out with an angry roar, "I must be the first one to arrive." After landing, he looked at the people on the roof. "Why are you all here?" Several people entangled for a while, and saw a long nose spanning the void, crossing his hands in front of his chest, like a god ascending. Then he fell down head first. His head sank directly into the ground, and his legs twitched. Luogu looked at it and said in a low voice, "Is this one dead?" However, after being pulled out from the ground like a carrot, he was still alive and well. Then I saw the group of people approaching Luffy one by one. Luffy shouted loudly, "I don't want to hear other people say whether it's life or death. Robin, I want to hear it from your own mouth." Robin's eyes turned red as he watched them. In fact, there are some things that don't need to be said anymore. When you see them standing here, you can see that they are in a mess, but they have a high fighting spirit. Everything has been left unsaid. But Luogu smiled and said, "Hey, Straw Hat Boy, have you really thought about it? Did you see the flag above my head? Do you know what you are about to face? With your power, really do you want to be an enemy of this terrifying power and the entire world? Think about it carefully, you still have a chance now." "Yeah." Luffy looked up and said, "Sniper King, shoot through it." "Clear." The long nose with the mask took a step forward, and a fireball flew out, piercing through the aura that symbolized Judiciary Island in an instant. The flames burn, leaving only ashes. Luogu nodded silently, then turned to look at Robin. Robin was already in tears. Tisk 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 Logogu smiled, what a group of children with high fighting spirit. It would be a pity if such guys couldn't fight in person, right? Convey my order and lower the suspension bridge. Let them know what they have done. What kind of price does it cost? Lucci glanced at Logogu with some doubts in his eyes. But still nodded, using the phone bug to notify. The suspension bridge fell with a click, and Logogu said with a smile, if you want to save people, come and I will wait for you. You bastard, I didn't expect you to be quite reasonable. Luffy suddenly laughed and jumped down. In a blink of an eye, there was no one on the roof. This group of people can be regarded as showing their special abilities, and everyone has their own way to get down from such a high place. Logogu looked at the few people around him, and said with a smile, next, I'll leave it to everyone. Clear. Several people nodded. Several other people were about to leave, when Lucci suddenly said, but before stopping them, there is one thing that needs to be clarified. What's the matter? Logogu asked. Who are you? Lucci looked at Logogu. Logogu laughed loudly, of course I am your commander, Spondum. Spondum's personality is too different from yours, Lucci said coldly, if it were him, he would never lower the suspension bridge. Such an order is completely impossible to come from his mouth. Moreover, he doesn't have the habit of carrying a bag with him. Khalifa disappeared and you didn't ask a question. It seems that you already know about it. So, can you let us see what's in your bag? This is the way you speak to your commander. The premise is that you are really our commander. In an instant, several people from CP9 surrounded Logogu. Logogu grinned, wow, it's so scary to be seen through. You really deserve to be an agent. As he spoke, his face suddenly twisted and turned into Khalifa, isn't Khalifa right here? In other words, if it becomes like this, you will believe my words even more. As he finished speaking, he already looked like Lucci, except that there was no bird on his shoulders. A group of CP9s looked at it dumbfounded, and someone murmured in a low voice, this ability is so convenient. They are secret agents, and they have worked hard to hide their identities, and they have really worked hard to carry out their tasks. Moreover, some people simply do not have the corresponding conditions. Their facial features are so obvious that they stand out wherever they go. So looking at Logogu's random appearance, he felt envious. If you have such an ability, then you can hide wherever you want, right? Lucci's pupil suddenly shrank, where is Khalifa? When she was out of sight, it was probably only once, if you don't count the time when Khalifa went to the bathroom. When going to deal with the man on the roof of the carriage. So, you are the one on the carriage. Lucci quickly came to a conclusion. Logogu smiled and said, yes, yes, if you want to know who I am, then I will tell you. I am actually your father. CP9 looked at Lucci together. Lucci's face turned dark. You looked like you had solved the case. What are you planning to do? His eyes were distracted for a moment. Logogu grabbed Robin's wrist and was about to run. Finger gun. When the strong wind hit, Logogu had no choice but to take a step back. In the next second, the figure in his hand was empty, and Robin was gone. Logogu didn't know when he came behind Frankie, if you go down from here, you won't die. Frankie was stunned, what? The next second, the whole person took off into the air. Logogu came to the edge and smiled slightly, bye everyone. He jumped directly onto Frankie's back. Frankie was stunned and said, get down. You're a reformer, are you afraid of falling? I can't die myself, but it's different with you. Frankie yelled. As soon as the voice fell, there was a loud bang, and it had already fallen to the ground. Just when Straw Hat and the others came to the front, seeing the two people on the ground, they were filled with righteous indignation for a moment. Damn Spondum, I actually threw you down. After finishing speaking, he saw Logogu again and was suddenly confused, Why did you jump down too? Who are you? Why are you wearing Spondam's clothes? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate's Bounty, Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 185. Luogu jumped up, lightly dusted himself, then stretched out his hand and said to Frankie, "Friend, are you okay?" Frankie got up from the ground with a livid face, looked at his body, it seemed that there was no distortion, and then he glared at Luogu. Luogu smiled, didn't care, and glanced at the straw hats. "Really, Ki-wan?" Luogu smiled, "Unfortunately, it's such an occasion to meet everyone." Everyone doesn't know how to follow up with these words. Luogu didn't seem to want them to take over, he waved his hand and said, "Okay, I've basically done what I can do. I'll leave the rest to you." After finishing speaking, he stepped a little bit, his figure sprinted 3 times and 2 times, and he disappeared in a blink of an eye while stepping on the moon. The Straw Hats didn't do anything either, and everyone set up a shelter to watch Luogu disappear before their eyes, and then looked at each other in blank dismay. Who is this? How can there be time to take care of this guy? Miss Robin is still waiting for us. Sanji roared and ran away. The others hurriedly followed as if waking up from a dream. Only Frankie looked at the direction Luogu left and began to worry about Pluto's design. To be honest, the choice made in a desperate situation is not what you want, but that you have no other choice. I just hope that what Robin knows about this person is true, and that he really will not be interested in Hades, otherwise, a lot of persistence will become meaningless. The battle has already started, and Luogu is sitting on the roof, eating an extra fruit at some point in his hand. As he gnawed, he wondered what else he could do next. In the end, I found that there seemed to be nothing I could do. Robin had to be saved by Luffy and the others, and he wanted to give Spondam a beating, but he had already finished it. He has already taken all the devil fruits into his bag, and he also brought a blueprint of Hades and a golden phone bug. Speaking of which, I probably shouldn't have gotten this thing. He looked at the golden phone bug in his hand, thought deeply, and finally shook his head. Forget it, let's go. There is no point in continuing to stay, so it is better to leave directly. He jumped up and ran for the gate after falling down. Along the way, we can see what Luffy and the others have done. The entire Judiciary Island was in chaos, and the sailors were lying on the ground moaning endlessly. Although there were not many dead, many were beaten unconscious. While watching, he shook his head. Pirate, it's really cruel. The sea train obviously has no use value. Luogu came to the port and finally found a small tool, similar to a motorboat, but it looks a lot simpler. After a little research, I understood the principle and method of starting, and drove it away immediately. In a blink of an eye, Judiciary Island was behind him. Luogu parked the motorboat on the sea, and then watched quietly with his legs crossed. Finally, he took out a phone bug from his pocket and called home. He told them that he would go back soon, and then he became a little idle, turning over and over to kill time. When I was free, I sank into the sea water to see if there was anything like Neptune. I haven't eaten it for a long time, let alone, it's a bit like missing. However, it does not. These Navy agents and so on, they just swept the bottom of the sea a little too clean. Luogu curled his lips, leave nothing for others, it's so unruly. As time passed by, Luogu slept several times on the motorboat. Of course, if he hadn't always rolled off the motorboat and fell into the sea, he probably could only sleep once. He didn't know how many times he had slept, but he suddenly opened his eyes and looked around in a daze. The sea was vast, and a ship floated in front of him. The hull of the ship was seriously damaged, and a pirate flag was fluttering in the wind. Luogu couldn't help but smacked his lips at the sight of the straw hat skull on the pirate flag. Shaking his head, he yawned again after he came to his senses completely. It's finally here. The excitement in the distance has subsided, and the appearance of this ship obviously tells Luogu that this battle is over. He immediately operated his motorboat, arrived in front of the pirate ship, jumped on board. Standing on the bow, a group of scarred and exhausted guys appeared in front of his eyes. Yo! Luogu beckoned to them. All the people in the boat suddenly stood up. Those holding knives held knives, those holding slingshots held slingshots, those wielding sticks swung sticks, and those holding straw hats held tight. The corner of Luogu's mouth twitched, always feeling that if he made a move at this time, he would probably be able to make a lot of money. Only Robin and Frankie didn't move because they were trying to figure out who this guy was. Luogu waved to them, calm down, if I have malicious intentions, you are all dead. Oh! Lukai's face of a natural villain suddenly turned hideous, obviously feeling that Luogu's words were brazen. Luogu smiled, one day, I really hope to have a good competition with you. The three-sword style has been famous for a long time, and the 3000 troubles are like that. Well, I really want to feel it personally. What kind of terrifying swordsmanship? Then he looked at Sanji again, the food is delicious. Thank you for the seafood fried rice. Speaking of which, is there anything to eat on the ship now? It's you. Sanji suddenly woke up when he heard this. Luogu smiled, then glanced at these people one by one, and when he finally looked at Nami, he suddenly thought of her sister. Blinking his eyes, he didn't take it seriously. Well, I just want to see you. I'm relieved to see that you are still so energetic. He jumped from the bow to the deck, and when he looked down at the ship, his eyes were a little dazed. I remember that when he was reading the original novel, the famous scene that moved him the most was this ship. Even when Ace died, he was not as sad as if the Golden Melly had left the scene. After sighing softly and packing up some past memories, he heard Sauron ask, "Who are you?" You will know in the future. Luogu smiled, however, at that time, I'm afraid we can only face each other with swords. So now, let's communicate with you in this way. Don't worry, now I really don't mean anything malicious, I just want to see you, that's all. After he finished speaking, he looked at Robin again, would you like to chat? Pirate's Bounty. Don't run away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 186. Robin was silent for a moment and nodded, just right here. Luogu smiled slightly, yes. After taking a look at the people on the boat, he smiled and said, speaking of which, I should congratulate you for finally finding your destination. Congratulations. I also want to thank you for taking this special trip. It has nothing to do with me. I just came here to watch the excitement. By the way, I can get something to go back. Luogu smiled and said, after all, I always feel that the loss is a bit big recently, so it's good to take something to stop the loss. I know one thing, Robin said suddenly. Yeah, Luogu was stunned, in what respect? The matter that both of you and I care about, Robin said, perhaps, the end of everything, the answer to everything, will be finally told to you by us. You. Luogu simply sat on the side of the boat, and after being silent for a while, he said with a smile, this road is still far away. But I believe we can get to the end. In this world, you can't do it just because you believe in it. Although he said that, Luogu still waved his hand, but it doesn't matter. What if you succeed? Speaking of which, these recent pirates are actually not very popular. In comparison, you are indeed pretty good. Maybe, there is really hope. Luffy is the protagonist of One Piece. But in this world, we can't simply think that the protagonist can do whatever he wants. In fact, all worlds are like this. When people firmly believe in the law of the protagonist's immortality, at the finale, the protagonist will make a bang, and the one who dies is called simply. People euphemistically say that only tragedy can make people impressed. But Luogu didn't like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it, but who can know the author's thoughts? I was immersed in self-pleasure and could not extricate myself. The final outcome was oriented, but it might just be because when I slapped my forehead, I slapped it a little too hard. Thinking of this, Luogu couldn't help but want to laugh. One Piece, although it is indeed possible for Luffy to become the Pirate King, but who knows whether at the end of the story, it will simply show that the meaning of One Piece is only freedom. Luogu smacked his lips and didn't speak for a while. The others didn't understand the conversation between the two people at all. Luffy couldn't help but ask, "Robin, who is this guy?" Luogu stretched out a finger and said with a smile, "It's better to keep this as a secret. After all, knowing everything so clearly would be a bit boring." It's true Luffy has a big heart, and he was convinced by such a reason. Luogu looked at him with strange eyes. I couldn't help it, and started laughing. "What's so funny?" Luffy asked. Luogu smiled and shook his head. "This is really a strange world. Some people live carelessly, but they seem to be favored by God. But some people need to work hard and exhaust all their brain power and energy. You have to work hard to get what you want. It's unfair, it's really unfair. But in fact, it depends on the person, aren't you right?" "I don't understand what you're talking about at all," Luffy said. Luogu nodded. "Well, forget it, you won't understand in the future either." He waved to Robin. "Okay, let's go." "Wait!" Robin suddenly stopped him. Luogu turned around. "A little strange, there is something else." Robin thought for a moment and said, "I think I still have to tell someone your identity." "Why do I feel that if you tell someone, everyone on this ship will know about it?" "But we'll keep it a secret. Now it will be conservative, but it will be difficult in the future." Luogu glanced at Luffy. Luffy was stunned. "Why are you looking at me?" Luogu didn't speak. Robin was silent for a while, and sighed, "Then it's up to you." You won't know it's me when we meet in the future, but we will definitely be enemies by then." Luogu nodded, turned around and left again. Then I heard another voice saying, "Wait a minute." Luogu had to stop again and turned around. "What's wrong?" After looking at it, he found that the person who called him was not Robin. The voice was a woman's voice, and Luogu's eyes naturally locked on Nami. She looked at Luogu and then at Robin. Although she stopped Luogu, she did not speak to Luogu. Instead, she asked Robin in a low voice, "Is that what I thought?" Robin couldn't help but smile slightly, then nodded. Nami's eyes lit up immediately, and she came to Luogu's side in 3 steps and 2 steps. She seemed very affectionate. She wanted to get closer, but remembered that she should be reserved. Luogu looked puzzled. "You're okay?" "I'm fine." Nami took a deep breath. "My name is Nami, nice to meet you. Besides, I will never be your enemy no matter what." Luogu was thoughtful, then nodded. "I have a heart." After he finished speaking, he put one hand on the side of the boat, jumped onto his own motorboat, and disappeared on the horizon in a blink of an eye amidst the buzzing sound. Robin came to Nami's side and found that Nami's eyes were still on Luogu. He couldn't help but softly said, "Why don't you follow?" Nami shook her head. "If I don't even know my identity, what reason do I have to follow?" Looking back, she sighed, "I am no longer qualified to follow him." When she returned to her village, the world that she thought was still a depressing atmosphere became full of laughter. The sudden collapse of Aaron's domain completely liberated her life. Luffy's invitation and their short time together made her decide to go to sea with them. But not to become the crew of One Piece, but to fulfill his dream, and to find that person and repay his favor. It's just a pity that the identities of the two parties are too different. Once they get close, there will be no good results. What's more, I just caused such a huge disaster. No regrets, because the determination and determination are all for her companions. No matter what troubles she encounters, she can bear it and is willing to bear it. However, with this kind of self, I am afraid that he will no longer be able to become his crew member, unable to repay the great kindness that cannot be repaid no matter what. So, don't be an enemy. No matter when it came, she would never be his enemy. Of course, this doesn't mean that she will bind herself in front of him in the future and become a bounty in his pocket. Anyway, let's talk about it when the time comes. It's too early to talk about it now. Now, at least I found him, Nami said softly. Pirate's bounty, don't run away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 187. Luogu didn't think of Nami's complicated thoughts at all. Going to Aaron's domain to catch Aaron was also for the bounty. Although he didn't reject the matter of saving others, he also didn't think it was his main purpose, let alone asking for anything in return. He has already taken what he should take, and other things have nothing to do with him. Carrying the harvest of this trip, he ran for 2 full days before returning to the capital of 7 Waters. To be honest, there is no pointer for this trip. If the track of the sea train is not still there, he may not be able to come back smoothly. After stepping ashore, he found a hidden place, and his figure changed instantly, but it was not his original appearance, but another image. After changing into a set of clothes he bought after landing, Shiren came outside his residence. At this time, it was just dark, so he jumped back to the big balcony outside his room. Originally I just wanted to go out and watch the excitement, but I didn't expect to watch the excitement for so long. Moreover, I haven't seen the real excitement yet, and I haven't seen a few wonderful battles, but there is no way. Now that Lucci has seen through him, he can't just hang around forever. This guy is smart. If he accidentally lets the other party catch clues, it's hard to say whether this hunter can still live in peace and contentment. And, if we go any further, Carp should also come to the capital of 7 Waters. Luogu thought in his mind and frowned slightly. There must be an explanation for Ace's affairs, and Garp has no reason to disappear. He smiled slightly at the moment. Pirate hunters catch pirates, it's natural. It's not like they kill people, so why should I be afraid of them? Shaking his head, he took off his clothes, took a shower, changed into a set of pajamas, and fell asleep peacefully. Going down to have breakfast the next morning, Makita and Dashiki saw Luogu as if they had seen a ghost. This person has been out for 2 or 3 days. When did he come back? Why so quietly? Luogu waved his hand, indicating that there is no need to talk, and after eating, he said to Makita, "You come out with me." Mishita nodded, and Dashiki pointed at herself, "What about me?" "Housekeeping." "Oh." Daisuke nodded immediately. "You can practice swordsmanship at home. The time on weekdays is very precious. If you cannot waste it on things like going out, it is better not to waste it." At the same time, I feel a little pity for Mishita. She wasted a lot of time practicing. Coming out of the house, Luogu didn't waste any time, and took Makita directly to find the iceberg. It's just that the mayor of the capital of 7 Waters looks a little decadent now. It seems that he has experienced a lot of twists and turns recently and is not very interested in anything. But seeing Luogu's arrival, he still cheered up and had a meeting. Luogu got straight to the point, "I need a ship, and I would like to ask you to help me personally." "Just modify it?" Modification. Bingshan was stunned for a moment, then shook his head. "If necessary, I can arrange it for you." "It's not an arrangement, it's in person," Luogu said. "I need you to do it yourself." Bingshan was taken aback for a moment, then smiled. "I don't make boats." "I don't want to make it, or I don't want to make it for others," Luogu said with a smile. "Things like sea trains can be built. It would be a pity not to make ships. I don't ask for too much, so I still invite Bingshan Mayor, think about it carefully. Of course, if it succeeds, I will give you a satisfactory reward. Satisfy. Bingshan was a little helpless about this, sighed and said, please. The reason why I saw Luogu was because he bought a big house here. Such wealth obviously has an extraordinary status. That's why he met. But he didn't mean to be used to such unreasonable demands. Luogu sighed, then took out a piece of paper from his arms and put it on the table. Bingshan glanced at it, then looked at Luogu, a little confused. Rogu held out his hand to signal. Bingshan was silent for a moment, picked it up, opened it and glanced at it. His expression suddenly changed. Where did you get it? It's not important, Luogu said with a smile. What's important is that I don't need you to help me do this. It's too dangerous, too scary, and incompatible with my personal aesthetics. I just need you to help me transform a ship. I will be satisfied if I can enhance the boat with some interesting functions so that it can run faster than ordinary boats. When the time comes, I will hand over all the remaining content to you and will never keep it to myself. This is mine sincerity. Bingshan's face was gloomy. You are threatening me. Luogu sighed. This can't be said to be a threat. After all, if I hand this thing over to the world government and the navy, I think I can have as many ships as I want. However, I still value your ability. Closing his eyes, Bingshan looked at Luogu. Why should I believe you? Think carefully about what I will get once I hand over this kind of thing. Luogu tapped his fingers lightly on the table. As long as I am willing, what I can have is definitely more than a ship. But I know, what I did may not be the same as yours, but at the same time, at least I don't want this kind of thing to really appear in this world. And now, I just use him to exchange for you something I need. My sincerity has reached this point. Isn't it enough to explain everything? That's hard to believe. Believe it or not, you can take the risk, Luogu said with a smile. Anyway, the initiative is in my hands. If I want, I can take it out now. If I don't want to, you give it to me after remodeling the ship. I may not necessarily hand it over. The possibility is about / it depends on how you choose. How to choose? No choice. Bingshan closed his eyes and finally said, I understand. What kind of ship do you want? A ship that can imprison people with devil fruit abilities. There is a prison under my ship, and I have prepared the materials for sea tower stones. The purpose of looking for you is to ask you to help me improve this ship. The power system allows him to run faster. If he flies, it won't be a problem. After all, I don't have that much coke. Do you know Frankie? Bingshan remembered a certain name when he heard this. Luogu shrugged his shoulders. It's not important, and I also hope that you can keep this matter secret. The condition is that I will keep this thing secret with you. I understand, Bingshan said. Bring the boat here and I will help you modify it. Very good. Happy cooperation. Luogu smiled, stood up and turned around and walked out with Makita. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate's Bounty, Don't Run Away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 188. Time passed, and a week had passed in the blink of an eye. On the coast, the big ship has already entered the water, and this time the adjustment and transformation are overall. The bow of the boat has also changed its appearance. It is no longer that ferocious animal head, it looks ordinary and ordinary. From a distance, it doesn't look like a hunter's ship, but rather a merchant ship. On the shore, Bingshan was wearing overalls, looking at Luogu. I've done what you want. Luogu looked back and nodded in satisfaction. Very good, as expected, you did it yourself. Luogu has watched this ship go up and down several times. The unique wind system is much better than ordinary sailboats. It can borrow the wind force to the greatest extent to push the speed of the hull. In this regard, it has been produced to the extreme according to his requirements. As for that kind of coke system, I guess only a guy like Frankie can come up with it. In addition, the prison on the lower level has been extensively refitted. The space is divided into upper and lower floors, and the sea-floor stone material is used as completely as possible to ensure that its effectiveness can be applied to every corner. In this way, if you meet those pirates in the future who don't want to be imprisoned in the fall, you can also have a way to ensure that they can't mess around. Overall, Luogu is satisfied. So at this time, he didn't mean to embarrass Bing Shan. He took out the design drawing and handed it over directly to the other party. This stunned Bing Shan a bit. Although he completed the ship according to Luogu's request, he was actually mentally prepared, waiting for the other party to continue to speak loudly. But I didn't expect it to be so happy. For a moment, I felt as if I had misunderstood the other party's motives. Your expression tells me that you are surprised, Luogu said with a smile. I really didn't expect this. Bing Shan looked at the design in the book. The person who got this kind of thing could hand it over to me so easily. I didn't expect it. There is nothing unexpected. What I want is already there. As for it, Luogu looked at the design. From beginning to end, I never expected it to appear in this world. And, if you tell me, I will never keep this scourge any longer. The city of Seven Waters is a very beautiful place. Don't destroy the value of the city and cause undue disasters because of some things that shouldn't be there. Luogu would not admit it. He said this because he was worried that the house he bought here would eventually depreciate in value. Even depreciation is good. I am afraid that because of Pluto's design drawings, the capital of Seven Waters will be destroyed in the end. That is the real big loss. Bing Shan looked at the design drawing in his hand, his face was full of emotions, and finally smiled softly. Fortunately, I can hear these words, and I am glad that I didn't tamper with the ship. I think that people like you should have a special devotion to the things you make. Luogu smiled. Okay, we are not familiar with each other, there is no need to talk anymore. Let's go. Makita and Dashiki had already been waiting on the boat. Rogu turned around and boarded the boat. There was still an iceberg standing below, looking up. Seeing Luogu looking down, he asked, "Who are you?" "I have been thinking about this problem for several days, but I still haven't figured it out. The other party wants a special ship, which seems to explain the other party's identity. Navy, or pirate hunter. But for the Navy, it's probably impossible. They have their own shipbuilders, so there is no reason to come to them. Moreover, how can the Navy return the design to them after getting it? As for pirate hunters, this possibility is relatively high, and it has indeed been widely rumored recently that the most powerful pirate hunter in the East China Sea in the past 20 years is in the capital of Seven Waters. But it's really the person in front of me. How did he get the blueprint of Pluto? 2 days ago, Frankie and his group also came back, along with the group of pirates. And if this guy is really the hunter and got the Pluto design from Frankie, why are the pirates safe and sound? I have never been able to figure this out, and today I finally couldn't help but ask." However, Luogu didn't intend to answer this question, but just waved to him, "Goodbye." The big ship sailed, and in a short while, it was already far away from the coastline. After Bing Shan was silent for a moment, he looked at the blueprint in his hand and was about to leave when he heard Frankie's voice behind him. "Are you interested in doing me a favor?" Bing Shan turned his head, but Frankie saw the design in his hand at a glance. "Where did you get this thing?" Frankie was stunned. "Is what that guy said true?" "Who is that guy?" "It's impossible to hide it." After returning to the sea, Luogu sat at the table, looked at the sun above his head, and shook his head. "It doesn't matter, there is no direct evidence to prove anything anyway. Moreover, what the pirate said, who would believe it?" "Why don't you believe it?" Dashki came down from the second deck and said excitedly, "A new adventure is about to begin. I always feel that these words seem a bit familiar, Luogu said, but some people seem to be saying, what kind of adventure will be waiting for me today? Captain, who are you talking about? Mishita walked over with her legs weak, looking like she was exhausted. Luogu was able to confirm the prison below, and the power of Halashi had indeed acted on every space, and Makita played an indispensable role in this. Well, you will see you later. Luogu smiled, turned around and looked around. We should be almost out of the Seven Waters capital. Yeda Saiki took out the pointer and glanced at it. It's gone out. Luogu breathed a sigh of relief. It's good to leave. Garp is coming, he has to hurry up and leave. Although I say I'm not afraid, who knows what will happen after this guy comes. It's better not to meet, or not to meet. However, as soon as this thought flashed, a large navy ship appeared in the field of vision. Luogu just took a look and recognized it. After a moment of silence, he decided to leave it at that. If you see it, you will see it, and what should come can't escape. It's useless even if everyone returns to the cabin now. This ship looks like a merchant ship. God knows if they will come up to check because they are worried. Once there is any change and he is regarded as a pirate, it will be even more troublesome. Therefore, 15 minutes later, Luogu could only look at the majestic old man standing in front of him, looking at him with a look that wanted to kill someone. Hey, what a romance! Pirate's bounty, don't run away. Author, The Desolate Little Purity. Chapter 189. In the room, Luogu poured Garp a cup of black tea with a smile on his face, and said with a smile, try it, this is a good thing I picked up recently. Garp took the black tea cup in his hand, looked at it several times, and then said, I bought it with the money I got from catching my grandson. What? Luogu couldn't help laughing, looking at what you said. It seems that if I don't arrest your grandson, I won't be able to afford black tea. Then why are you arresting? Garp looked at Luogu with fire in his eyes. Luogu smiled, it's just catching a pirate, what's the big deal? After all, that's what I do. Garp took a deep breath and looked at him intently. He did not get over it because of such a gag. Luogu took a sip of tea, then nodded with satisfaction, glanced at Garp, and smiled softly, don't worry too much, after all, he is still alive, isn't he? And, for a while, he shouldn't be dead. Danger. Garp looked at Luogu coldly, I really hope to let you feel what kind of scenery it is to push into the city. Unfortunately, I am a good hunter who abides by the law, Luogu said with a smile, unless I want to go, otherwise, it will be difficult to go to the city. That's not necessarily the case. Garp gave Luogu a cold look. Luogu smiled, you don't hate me so much, do you? Your grandson, you didn't teach yourself well. If you don't do good things like ordinary people, you go to the sea to make a living. You don't do good things like hunters, but you just become the sea thief. Now that I have caught you, put him in jail and discipline him well. Maybe after you come out, you can change your mind and start a new life. You are a navy, and he is a pirate. I caught him, but there was nothing he could do. If you caught him yourself, it would be like a family ethics drama at 8 o'clock. Luogu's mouth was not forgiving, and he didn't care whether Garp could understand it or not, so he said to himself, now, no one knows about that matter. All the blame is put on Blackbeard, and Blackbeard Husa didn't even have a chance to defend himself, because he was already dead. In this way, at least Ace would not be publicly executed, and it was hard to say whether his fellow pirates would go to the city to save people. Even if you don't go, someone will probably go. Having said that, he looked in the direction of the capital of Seven Waters. Garp's eyes changed slightly, you know again. It's nothing, Luogu said with a smile, anyway, no one has specifically concealed this. Isn't it natural for others to know? Cap fell silent again. Luogu smiled and poured himself another cup of tea, After all, from now on, you and I should at least maintain some contact. After all, as far as this matter is concerned, the current insiders are probably you and I. Well, there is also a group of pirates, but they basically won't tell them. After all, not everyone under Whitebeard is as unreliable as Blackbeard. Cap reframed the whole thing in his mind. Luogu's appearance, design, planning, arrest, beheading, including the appearance of the painter, this series of things turned over and over in his mind for several times. The final conclusion was that Luogu was right. As far as the result is concerned, Ace was certainly caught, but his life was not in danger. The fatal secret was forever strangled in his throat. If there is any problem in the future, it is a fatal sequelae. The painting painted by Luogu clearly recorded that Roger, the Pirate King, was a woman with a big belly and a black beard as a child. When these three people get together, at least the information exposed is that Roger, the One Piece, has a child. So, what is the situation of this child now? Garp thought about it in his heart, and finally sighed again. It is estimated that the impact will not be too great. In fact, many people knew that Roger had a child, and a large-scale search was conducted on this matter. But now, based on that painting alone, it is impossible to associate this matter with Ace. The person who might reveal the secret is already dead. From now on, Ace can no longer float on the sea. He was sent into Impel Down City and he can reach it. Then after thinking about it so carefully, he found out that this guy, Luogu, had reaped a lot. Others either gave their lives or their freedom, but it was hard for him to say whether he gained more or lost more. So, let's have a cup of tea, Luogu said with a smile, then you do what you should do, and I will do what I should do. If there is anything in the future that requires your help, I won't be polite either. That's it? Carp stood up with a livid face, turned around and walked to the door, and then looked back at him. This matter will not end here. Roga looked at Garp calmly. After a moment, Garp said again, goodbye. The old man opened the door and went out. Luogu sat there quietly without saying a word. At last he smiled softly, then goodbye. As if it was just a small interlude, Garp came and Garp left. When he came, his eyes looked like they could kill, and when he left, his eyes were no less impressive, but no one died in his hands. Luogu kept looking at the ship, and after it disappeared from his sight, he let out a long breath. This old man is still very difficult to fool, so Luogu didn't intend to fool the other party. Everything he said was carefully considered. The most important thing is, what can this old man get? Got a grandson who runs around the world and doesn't obey the rules, and there is no immediate danger to his life. There will be a lot of room for maneuver after that. As for what Garp chooses, that is his own business. As for Luogu, sitting on the bow of the boat, looking at the mast sails on the ground above his head, he heard jingling in his ears, and when he looked again, he saw Makita coming out with a lot of things. What are you doing? Luogu asked interestingly, and his crew members were quite worried. People like Garp had just left the ship, and she was interested in playing with these gadgets. Of course you have to write the words on the sail, Makita said as a matter of course. Pirate hunter, how majestic. Wait a minute, Luogu said, I won't write this word for now. Why? Didn't you notice? Luogu looked up speechlessly. After writing those few words, few pirates came up to me. But now they are coming to my door again. He pointed out that a pirate ship was approaching roaringly.